here. And another discussion. My name is Judah McNeil. I'm here with Ford Suze, and we have a special guest, Mike Emmert, and his daughter Hannah in the background there. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Judah?
Ford, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
So this is a special occasion. We all went to the same school, Toccoa Falls College. We were on the same hall, 2A, and we're gonna talk to Steven Sandridge next week, pretty soon here. We might be able to get all four of us on. And I will always remember. I think it was Mike that it was his room that introduced me to the online video meme.
Yeah, that was me.
I always remember watching dancing hamsters and
what was that one?
Yeah, it was all about E-Bomb's world at that point in time.
Yeah.
What was that one that was it was the 0 hour thing? The all your base are belong to us. Wasn't that? I feel like I saw that in Mike's room too.
All your base
probably
are belong to us. Yeah. So today, what we're going to reverse redact is college, or Christian college even, to get more specific. Since all of us went to the same Christian college, I don't think we're going to go back and be too critical. Maybe we will.
I'll probably be the cynic. Yeah, I'm really curious. I'm really curious to pick your guys' brains because, yeah.
Well, remember always that reverse redaction isn't a cynical view, but we're going back and trying to get rid of the obfuscation,
yes,
of past times. And I think it's pertinent. Recently, I saw on Facebook. Have you guys ever heard of the band Luxury? Did you guys ever listen to Luxury?
I did while we were there. I mean, on and off, but probably through you, actually.
Okay, yeah. Doug Andrews, my roommate in college towards later on was Jordan Tomei, and he was eventually in the band. He was part of Locust Years First, which was one of my favorite bands back then. But and then he became part of Luxury, which I kind of liked. I think I like it more now. But anyways, they posted on the Toccoa Falls Facebook. They posted a documentary called Parallel Love, the story of a band called Luxury for TFC alumni and their unique journey of faith. So three of them have become priests in the Orthodox Church.
Fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, it's a real. If you guys can, I will post the link below, and I'll send you guys the link. It's a very interesting documentary.
So I just found it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's in Paste magazine.
Oh wow.
Huh.
So how fortuitous that three of us are speaking now. None of us in the Orthodox tradition, of course, but I've dabbled in the Orthodox tradition. I'm not against it.
I'm kind of free floating in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, there's a part of my hipster identity that is kind of a little I don't know, magnetized towards some of that stuff. It's yeah.
And if we were reverse redacting Christian Orthodox, then then we could keep going on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
But so we all three of us went to a Christian college called Toccoa Falls College, a small school in what is it, like northeastern Georgia, and it was a CMA, Christian Missionary Alliance school. And I'm still part of a mission. I'm in a Christian Missionary Alliance church. I had never heard of Christian Missionary Alliance. I'm still not sure what it is, but here I am.
So what about you, Mike? Are you still in the CNMA church?
No, we're not. We're actually in a non-denominational church, just here locally. Not affiliated with any kind of denomination. So yeah.
Did you have a CNMA background?
Actually, I did before college. We went to a CMA church, and let's see, it was for uh, almost my whole length of living in Georgia. So from 10 years old on, we went to a CMA church, and then that's kind of ultimately how I found out about Toccoa Falls. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
quite the past in that tradition there.
Right. Yeah, and I did as well. I went to a Christian Missionary Alliance church when I was a kid. One of my best friends, his dad was a pastor, and so we kind of grew up together, and we went on and off. We church hopped, as they say, for quite a while. We'd come back, and yeah, so and I found out about Toccoa Falls loosely through them. I think through that church.
Okay. So being the new guy this week, and just kind of I picked up your show a few weeks ago and told Judah I thought you guys were doing awesome on the show, and he's like, yeah, you got to come on. And so I'm trying to make sure I'm in the right element here. Judah said that on reverse redaction, it's not about a topic, it's about an item, or so in this case it would be Christian colleges.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right, and I think we'll probably extrapolate that to other things. But I guess we'll
Okay.
just see where it goes. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I stay on topic and or on.
We
Yeah.
we like to use inductive reasoning. We start with the very specific and we broaden out to the universal. And because I mean really I think we've stuck pretty close to the object at hand, the thing that we bring up at the beginning. But we talk about all kinds of things. So, how do you guys feel at this point? All of us in our 30s at this point. It's been a while. It's been over a decade.
It's almost been, yeah, you're right. It's been almost 15 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where are you guys at? How do you feel when you look back? And let me ask it this way. If you had to do it over again, would you go to a Christian college?
I would, just because of my life. I don't really want to change any part of it. I mean, I met Melissa there. If I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have met Melissa. Wouldn't have Satya or Rohan. We most likely wouldn't have ended up in India. I did not think about India. Wasn't even on my radar before going. So, I think.
Okay. Let me change it.
Okay.
Because it gets real personal, I guess, then. If you do it that way. So so let me put it this way.
For my kids?
Are you going to encourage your kids to go to a Christian school? Like, I got to make my voice low because both of you guys have very low voices. I don't want to be the one left out. So would either of you guys encourage your kids to go to a Christian school?
At this point, I don't even want it. I don't want my. I just want to undo all school totally. So I just want to do everything on the internet. So I definitely not a Christian school. I mean, unless she like begs or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't think I would.
What about you, Mike?
Well, yeah, I think it's a pretty complex answer for me, because I think maybe to put in perspective to your audience, who may not have had any exposure to Christian colleges at all.
Right.
Well, dude,
you're our
audience, so.
Right.
This is it right here.
It's been fun. That's funny. But no, I think you might have some listeners out there that are attracted by your episodes that like Ender's Game and Thor. I mean, those kind of shows there attract people who may not have had any exposure to Christian college, and if they are tuning back into this show, what are they going to listen for? So I'm going to help put this in perspective for this show. We, the three of us have Christian backgrounds, and we chose a Christian school, partly because of that. But the school we went to in particular, it wasn't as legalistic as a lot of Christian schools out there. Excuse me. But it had
for people who aren't Christians, who don't know what that term means, it would mean like moralistic, like having very rigid, traditional, people can't, guys, girls can't dance, can't kiss, like some much more so than our school. Like that's.
Although we weren't, my first year, we were all first year at the same time. We weren't allowed to have beards.
Well,
there were certain aspects that were, but
and then I don't know that would necessarily be because it was a Christian school. That could be more of like maybe in the dress code category, like screen prints. We couldn't wear screen print T-shirts to class, things like that. But our school, in the sense of legalism, we didn't have rules like, you can't walk on the same sidewalk as the opposite sex, like some Christian schools are like that, yeah. And I'm not bashing any in particular, so I'm not going to mention names, but that's kind of, as far as our school, we didn't have rules that were that strict. But as far as like public displays of affection, you had to be careful with holding hands. You definitely couldn't kiss in public and things like that. There were other rules that came along with it. You couldn't drink alcohol, you couldn't have tattoos, those kinds of things. So all that to say is, I chose to go there and I chose to stay there. So I kind of felt like I wasn't able to complain about it because, it was my choice to be there.
You weren't being held there against your will.
Right.
So same for me. I chose to go, and my parents didn't send me. So
right, and I paid for it to. It was an expensive school to go to, and I paid money to do that, and so knowing what the rules were, I still chose to be there. Looking back on it, I think Ford, to kind of answer the way you did, I wouldn't go back and change it because my personal life developed how it is now. I met my wife there and that development. But Judah, to kind of touch on how you said, would I encourage my kids to go to a Christian college? I probably wouldn't. If they wanted to, I would encourage it. But if they didn't want to, I wouldn't encourage it. I would encourage my kids to go to a college that best suited their needs. Right. And the reason I would not encourage a Christian school or why I'm not partial to a Christian college in particular, or the idea of Christian colleges, is because in the Christian world, I don't think that translates to remaining in the Christian faith. I don't think that to some, maybe it does. But I think the paths we choose, the decisions that we make through life, whether we go to a Christian college or not, we're still, I have the belief that we're gonna follow our desires. If you're going to a public university and your heart truly is to follow God, you're going to reflect that in your life, and you will be an example to others rather than be the one who's influenced to kind of follow the wrong crowd. And it's going to be the same in Christian school too. I don't think that those influences that come from the school you go to direct your life as much as some people may say. That's just not my thought.
That could be. I think there are some restraints that are good. To answer the question, I'm not gonna. No, I will not encourage. I have a feeling though, I'm gonna have to be sneaky about it, because if I discourage my kids from going, they're probably gonna go. So I have to be kind of sneaky about it. But I do not want my kids to go to a Christian college, and kind of like you, Ford, I don't want them to go to college in general. Right. But but particularly Christian school. And I come from being homeschooled through 6th grade and then private school up until Toccoa Falls College. But I have to say, I am thankful for Toccoa Falls College, and I am thankful for I am thankful for the training and obviously I met my wife there. We all met our wives there.
Right.
We all met each other there, and
Right.
I'm thankful for your guys' friendship and many more friendships that I've made there. Joseph and David and all kinds of people that I still keep up with on a regular basis. However, I'm not thankful for my $70,000 bill that I still have. Now, granted, most of that was, or probably half of that was my fault for taking more out than I should have. I was, it was at the peak of, money was free back then. I think we were getting loans at like 3% back then with Stafford loans back in, so this was back in 2000.
Yeah. 1999 to 2003.
2002. Yeah. And it was like a heyday of lending. Right. And I think this was the first, I think it was one of the first classes to be able to take out as much as we could from the government. Right. I don't know.
I don't know if it was the first. I'm not sure, but I do remember it being very easy. I remember talking to a few people and them saying, all you have to do is have a heartbeat and you can get financial aid. It was easy. Like you, Jude, I did the same thing. I racked up debt to stay at the school. I liked the school and I stayed there. And so I was willing to rack up financial debt for my education. And so that was, I think depending on which school it is, they're going to have programs that are very good programs that, you may not be able to get from a public university. And if it's that specific and the education is that good and it is worth the money, then do it. But in my case, I was paying a lot more money than I really needed to for a biblical studies degree. And when you think, your return on investment,
Right.
it's not really worth it.
Exactly. It's kind of like film school majors, like how many of them are going to become, filmmakers? And it's like, at least with that, you have the option of finally making a movie that's going to make millions of dollars. But like you think, biblical studies, I don't know if it should be that expensive, seeing that if you're coming a pastor, like
you might become a Jimmy Swaggart.
Well, then that's true. That's true. I forgot. There is that career path.
Yeah.
Who's a more contemporary guy than Jimmy Swaggart? That's pretty old.
Joel Osteen.
Joel Osteen.
I mean, he's not, I wouldn't put him, I don't know. I got some family at that church and I think he's a better guy than people point him out to be, but I disagree with his methodology fundamentally.
For a future reverse redaction. But I would agree that one of my biggest frustrations, you look at just a cursory, let's do a real quick, 20% of the people I graduated with are actually using their degree.
Right, yeah.
Maybe less.
Well, and I think that's a reflection on just the university system to begin with. Like, there's just so much of it is just, it, like, honestly, it still makes sense in a place like India where people will keep going. They'll stay within their major. Like they graduate and then they go into their field and they work hard, and they make it work. But I feel like there's so many, how do you say, frou degrees in the US where, as a kids, we just don't know what we're doing. And it's almost like we just need somebody to be like, no, I think you're good at this. Like, why don't you do this? And it's like, I don't know. It's difficult to say that because I'm an individualist, but at the same time, as a kid, you're just kind of stupid, and you're like, I'm going to be this thing, and you end up picking some random major that's totally useless.
I went in thinking I was going to get a business degree until I met no offense to those business professors, but I met the professors at Toccoa, and I realized Toccoa is not a place to get a business degree.
Well, and that's one of the things, like, my roommate, Ryan, I've been meaning to talk to him this week. We kind of chatted a little bit through text message.
Ryan Lorenz.
Yeah, I was trying to touch base with him and just say, there was one time. And so one of the things about our college, we had those chapels. And so how many did we have a week? We had every day, every weekday?
Four
out of 5. Okay. So 4 chapels a week. And one particular day, a student was sharing their senior testimony, and they were talking about, it was basically a pitch to get everyone to become missionaries. And of course I was still in that mode of thinking of everything as a missionary, after my first trip to India, my thoughts about that changed significantly. And I had a whole different view. I was thinking more along the lines of an anthropologist or, a writer or a reporter or something. But that first trip to India kind of kicked me in the butt, and well, I hit my head against the wall and realized things were a little more complicated. But at that point, like when we both listened to that, we walked out of that testimony having totally different viewpoints. And Ryan was just like mad about it. He's just like, why does everyone keep trying to pitch this? And like this is like a 2-tier system at this school. You got the people who are going to be in missions, and you got the people who are, trying to do something else. And, like as if other work is not on the same level. And yeah, I wanted to kind of reverse redact that conversation, because back then I was just Mr. True believer. And now that I've lived overseas and seen missionaries in action and lived like a missionary for, part of our time, like that's something that needs to be reverse redacted. And I come down on the side of Ryan at this point. Like, work is good, and there in the Christian church, there is this tendency to sort of prioritize the quote unquote ministry. And that's problematic, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mike. Did you have something to say about it?
I can see Ryan, because I can see Ryan answering that way. I don't remember having that conversation with him, but knowing him, I can see him reacting that way.
Right.
And that you said that was like freshman year, first.
No, I want to say that was probably like junior year or sophomore year or something like that. I can't remember when, but yeah, we just had a totally diametrically opposed reaction to it. And, now that I've lived in the world a bit, I wish I'd have had more of his outlook, honestly. And again, I wouldn't change anything about my life, because I learned some things in the process, and I've met great people from starting out with that track. However, there's a certain naivete to the evangelical Christian ministry view of the world. There's a certain naivete about it that ends up, and that's one of the other reasons why I wouldn't send my daughter to Christian college at this point, I think.
Well, I'm not only do I actually have a job from my degree, but I think, did either of you go to get your master's?
No.
No.
I didn't.
So I doubled down. I doubled down and got a master's degree at a Christian college, and at Trinity up here. That's why I'm here up here.
Up here is Illinois.
Illinois, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Mike and I are from Illinois, and I think the problem I had, what really hit me, was when I was in graduate school and trying to pay for graduate school, doing the same thing, taking out loans, but also just trying to, pay for my rent, pay for food, pay for stuff like that. And I had a couple jobs, and in every single one of my jobs, my boss was like 2 or 3 years younger than I was. And so they were already middle management, and they were in their early 20s. And it hit me. I realized that if I had just gone into school, like I was thinking, I'm going to school to get a real good job, and it was starting to hit me already that I'm probably not going to find, like a $60,000-$70,000 job. I'm probably going to be in middle management if I'm lucky. And here, if I was, and it hit me that if I had just gone into school right after high school, I would probably be very successful at that point. And at this point, who knows? Might even own my own company.
But you mean going into school?
I'm sorry. If I had gone, I'm sorry. Did I say going into school?
Yeah,
if I had gone
work,
into the workforce, why did I say school? If I had gone into the workforce, so I've just worked, because all these guys had just left. So they graduated college, with who knows what kind of grades, and they just went into a job and worked their way up. And I talked to some of them, and they're like, yeah, just after a while you get promoted. And now being in the workforce, I realize, that's just that's the way the ladder works. You put your time in, you get, you put a letter of saying you want to go to this position or that position, and if you've had the time, you worked hard, and you're a smart enough guy, you get promoted.
Right.
But I just don't have that kind of patience. I'm still waiting on my $80,000 job.
Well, yeah, though. I mean, I'm trying to kind of come back to the conversation that you said you had with Ryan,
right?
And how it kind of, when I heard you talking about that, it reminded me of this local church that I haven't been to, but I kind of made a UE in their parking lot one day, and they have a sign that you can't read unless you're on the inside of their parking lot and you're leaving.
Right.
So you're leaving the church property. It says welcome to your mission field or something like that. And it's like it kind of puts things in perspective, kind of from what you were talking about, how Ryan was a little frustrated that all the focus and attention was given towards missions and missionary work, overseas and abroad, and he was kind of frustrated about that. And it makes sense, no matter what you do.
Yeah, and as someone who, I could write my own expose Michael Moore documentary, taking apart the Christian missionary industrial complex. I honestly could. I could make a better movie than that. Like, it wouldn't even be Michael Moore level. It would be like an actual good documentary level, because it is turned into a complex. It's turned into literally an industrial complex, and the best cure for this sort. And I'm not, I still consider myself a Christian. I think most my evangelical friends, even the ones that get a little frustrated with me, would still consider me a brother. But just the stuff that I've witnessed, it's just, there was a great movie with Robert De Niro, The Mission. And I just want every Christian to go watch that movie. There's too much politics involved. There's too much of a game going on when things actually get to, quote unquote, the field. There's all these other games that must be played, and it ends up being something else. And that movie kind of shows that from a very different perspective. Like it does a really good job showing how God, the gospel, get reduced to pieces on a chessboard, and for saving face, or for you got into the screenwriting sort of thing for a while there, and I don't know how much of those screenwriting books you read, but one of the things that happens in the production industry, the filmmaking industry, is if you write a screenplay and it's good enough to get picked up, sometimes these screenplays will just get bandied about, and sometimes nobody has the guts to take it on. So they'll buy the screenplay, but then just put it on a shelf, because it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. Like, they just got to put it somewhere so nobody else can have access to it. And there's a lot of things like that in the world where it's like, this thing should be out there in the open for everyone to see, but no, we're going to put it, we're going to let the Home Office hide that away, or for a publicity stunt. Another random here, this is another random idea, but those two Clint Eastwood movies about World War II, Flags of Our Fathers is what I'm thinking about. Like the picture of them hoisting that flag. Was it on Okinawa or one of the islands out there? But they're hoisting the flag, and that's become an iconic thing. And it was like a posed flag, and then these guys, it became a myth. And I've just witnessed that kind of thing happen with stuff that people do here. And then when that money, and this isn't just Christians that are guilty of this. This happens with any NGO, and I think it happens with other religions too, I'm sure. The money that's accumulated here in the Red Cross and goes down to Haiti, it ends up having a very different purpose when it gets there. Like you don't get to track that money. You don't get to, you have to trust this other third party, and politics comes into play, and there's numerous ways where that just dissipates. So anyways, I actually much more sympathize now with where Ryan was coming from. And if you go back, Martin Luther, he was saying, if I knew I was going to die tomorrow, I'd plant a tree. Like I think there's something dignified about work. And I saw that with the Indians that I worked with, making videos or doing Comic Cons or whatever. Like I saw them, many of them, whether they were Sikhs or Hindus, treating their work as worship. And they would say that. They would say, our work is worship. Not every Hindu does that either. I mean, the same thing happens, you have the same thing happen all over the world with different people. They make the quote unquote ministry mission the be all end all. And, superstition gets elevated above practical output, if that makes sense.
Practical output being,
well, I mean, a practical output being Martin Luther's planted tree, an actual wall being built, or an actual ditch being dug, an actual bridge being built.
So like felt need, like real needs.
And even the way that missionaries use that term, felt needs, like it ends up becoming like, again, a marketing campaign, like in which, that's ministering the felt need is the price you must pay in order to get them on the team, and a Hindu will call that person a rice Christian, and that was a thing, that became a thing. That's an epithet that is, has precedent, where basically people are bribed to change their religion. So it's like, bribing people to, and I know that sounds crude, but I mean, it's true. It happens. Like, it's not every case. I'm not saying that, but I just, the same problem I have with the college system is the same problem I have with a lot of these institutions. They're well-meaning, but they have unintended consequences because we're inheriting a lot of these systems, and we grew up in them, and we think that they work because, well, everyone's doing them. They seem to work. Mm-hmm. But are there other ways to accomplish it? And I think, especially with our increasing technology, going into $100,000 debt, maybe not the best way to learn something, and I think with the missions mindset, there's just better ways to communicate across cultural lines than from behind a pulpit.
So on the topic of the debt and the practical aspect of what we got out of it, I was just recently talking to a friend of mine from Toccoa. I don't know if you guys know him, David Tackett. I think you probably know him.
Yeah.
And he kept the notes from Dr. Collier, and he was reading me some of those notes, and I realized I don't remember anything I learned in that class.
Right.
How do we, so I want to ask both of you guys, how do we keep our kids from wasting their, so I don't think I wasted my money, but I did something wrong, or I participated in a way, or I need to do something now to to really get a return on my investment.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think to be fair for any college, Judah is, I mean, you're not Rain Man, so like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
no matter where you go
In
to
some
school,
ways, not the good ways.
close. You are close though. Like you're gonna forget things. You're gonna have entire classes that you just kind of disappear in the deepest
Right.
parts of your mind. I mean, but you probably have some very, very good memories or things that you do remember that came from your professors that, stick with you and you remember them because you remember them. But I guess I'm just saying that just to be fair, that wouldn't necessarily be Christian colleges. That would be anything.
That would be I would say that is part of the problem with the whole school system, that in general, like I'm teaching right now, 5th grade, and I'm teaching violin, and I just took a coding course a couple weeks ago with Lambda School. It's, they have this free pre-course work, trying to code JavaScript, and there's a certain cram mentality about so much school system. Like, and I see, them calling themselves a school actually makes sense. You just cram so much information, but how much information do we truly retain? Whereas when you're training for an actual work or the military, like you're learning the most essential things you're going to need in combat or in the business, and I mean, there are always going to be extra things that you're probably not going to use. I understand that in services and conferences and blah, blah, blah. But I think the ratio of retained knowledge in certain pursuits, like a football player, when he's watching film, or anybody playing any sport, when they're watching film of their previous day's play, like that is very focused. It's very focused on the tasks. And I feel like so much of school is just kind of like, look at everything.
Scattershot.
You have to memorize everything. And then we got in the real world, you're like, when did I need this?
Yeah.
And you lose it all. So I feel like my theory is that school is really just daycare.
Dang, college?
Yeah. No, all of it. It's all daycare. I'm serious.
Okay.
It's just something to keep people busy so they can get out of here because
everyone's too busy. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it because
I'm the cynical one here. So
at some point in time, it became the norm for employers to look at where you went to school and instead of your experiences, and
right.
So it just kind of escalated into what it is now.
Well, at some point, it used to be a place, right? College used to be a place of intense learning and preparation for the of the great books and enrichment, and I think we did get enriched. I can't deny that there was some enrichment there. Was it $70,000 worth? That's up to who knows, but the enrichment was there. So I thought about whether we should be reverse redacting college or Christian college. I came down to Christian college because all three of us went to Christian college. Right. So, but college in general has there's a real problematic approach these days where there's much more. Instead of enrichment, we're just talking about. It's basically just a experience.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And so now we're having the whole speech argument in a lot of these colleges. Obviously not Christian colleges, and so there's that whole debate going on. But even prior to that, you had the experience of college, which included mainly drunkenness and revelry. And I live in Panama City, Florida, so the drunkenness and revelry is right outside my door, and I call it the fertility cults festival without kids getting in the way. Like that's basically what it is. It's literally like a fertility cult festival, except there's no fertility. It's just it's absolute insane, just madness. And so I do appreciate that about a more and I feel like this could be applied without necessarily the spiritual element. And going to India and seeing how Sikhs deal with moral values and family values. Hindus deal with it, Muslims deal with it, Jains. Like, this is, I feel like there is something beneficial to kids to still have like a safe space from what is the word, lawlessness, a safe space from what we, the Old Testament would call license. Just you can do whatever the hell you want. And some of these people get shipwrecked on that. I mean, there are people who make it through and they're fine or whatever, but some people never make it out of that. And there's plenty of people at the University of Florida and FSU can attest to that. Like that can chew people up and spit them out. And that's just kind of the expectation, and kids are just, there's some kids do not know how to handle that responsibility. And, I was a goody two shoes, so I don't think I was ever really going to go in that direction. But it's just the peer pressure for everyone to kind of go in that direction. I don't think it's always very helpful. So I do appreciate that about having gone to a Christian college. It was I could focus on other things. I didn't just have to focus on sex, drugs, rock and roll, and booze.
Now Mike, you kind of had a rebuttal to that, right?
I wouldn't say a rebuttal. He kind of answered my question. I was going to ask that, outside of the relationships that we've made while there, what good came out of it in our own lives. So, I mean, I was going to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, they say where characters develop with intellect. That was Toccoa's tagline or, statement. And I think the character part, I did take some of things away from, they did have us do those student ministries. Like, I found those actually really beneficial, like going out into the community, doing Meals on Wheels, and the way that they incorporate it with actually existing, you could say secular helping programs, and meeting people out in the community from different socioeconomic levels and classes and races and backgrounds. And I don't know, that was instructive for me. Like I feel like, and this has been true for me whenever I've gone on quote unquote mission trip, I usually come back more like, geez, I learned a ton. Like I benefited from that, just from that interaction with that person. That person taught me so much. I went to a nursing home and there was this old lady there, and just, I mean, she was like she turned into like a mentor to me. I was there supposedly ministering to her. But yeah, I mean, she taught me so much. So I do think that, and would I have done that on my own volition? I do not think so. So I do definitely appreciate that.
Okay. What about you, Judah?
Outside of the personal relationships, I was thinking about this today in preparation for what we were going to talk about. I was thinking, if so relationships aside, my wife, say I were to meet Chanda serendipitously some other way, and meet you guys some other way, would I go back and go to Toccoa? And I have to say no. I don't feel like I feel like I got a lot out of it. But did I get enough out of it that I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else, is the question for me. And I just don't think, I think there are other places, other churches, other mentors that I could have developed actually better, because of the mentors I developed there, like Wetmore and Collier and Elkins, great teachers, but their attention was divided 20 different ways.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I've just read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. This is a entrepreneurship book, and just one point he makes in this book was like worth the price of the book. And so and I feel like I will retain this one lesson about, basically says that so many companies, so many, not just companies, but endeavors of humans are basically taking a one and making 100,000 copies of it. Someone found success. Okay, there's a Coke, so we'll be a Pepsi, you know, or whatever, like, you know, whoever's first in that whole thing. But like, there's McDonald's, so you're gonna have a Burger King. There's people that are gonna take this one idea and they're just gonna duplicate it, and it's gonna become, you know, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy is eventually going to run out. And so his whole point is that moving from 0 to 1 is the most painful experience human beings can do. Like, starting with what is just an idea, you know, like the leap from the PC to the iPhone, like that is moving from 0 to 1. Like, that's just, and people make fun of it. You know, everyone's like, oh, this is just a dumb idea. Oh, iPad, a dumb idea. Oh, blah, blah, you know. And I mean, these things, I realized when I was in India, I had an iPad that my father-in-law had given me, and I was using GarageBand, and I made my first little 8-bar phrase with it. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And the last 5 years, that has become like the soundtrack for my channel, and it's $5 app, you know, and like, that's just, I have a little orchestra in my hand. Like, this is amazing. And someone on Twitter was saying, oh, well, yeah, iPad's stupid. What is the point of it? It's just a glorified iPhone. And I was like, well, I just use it to make a song, GarageBand. And she was like, well, good for you. But you just think about how so many things we take for granted now started out as zeros. Like, and I feel like not many, how to say this without being a total jerk. I feel like because the Christian church has prioritized, especially the evangelical Christian church, I think this is less true for Catholics. The evangelical Christian church has prioritized faith so much that it has kind of gotten out of its mode where it's supposed to be applied, and it's just kind of seeped into everything. Let go and let God. And you don't get from 0 to 1 by letting go and letting God. You know, you don't become C.S. Lewis. I mean, every evangelical loves C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien did not get from 0 to 1 by letting go and letting God. They did not write Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia or any other thing by being 0 to 1. Like, those are two of the smartest dudes who's ever written, you know? Like, so there's just this kind of like, I don't know. And so I agree with you, Jude. If I could find all the people I found, I would try to do it a different way. I mean, I feel like I got more reading this, you know, this gay entrepreneur, Peter Thiel, who's just blown my mind because he's working on another level, and I can get that for $8 by reading a book.
What about you, Mike? Haven't heard from you. You kind of have a different perspective.
Well, for what?
The answer to this, you know, to your question about what we got out of college.
What do you mean? How do you know I have a different perspective?
Oh,
I don't know. I'm teasing it. I'm teasing it out. I'm hoping you do.
Honestly, I haven't even thought about the answer until I asked it, because I guess I just didn't anticipate it. But I think so I'm going to try to think through it as I talk here. But I think it probably would depend on when the question was raised to me. If it was right after I graduated, my answer probably would be a little bit different than it is now. Just because even though my exposure to the college hasn't changed, depending on how, you know, my maturity level through the years, my perspective has changed. And so I think, if anything, it has really helped shape me in my maturity level, because it's helped me see one, what fake Christians look like. It's helped me see what real Christians look like. And, you know, with me, sometimes I have a hard time with discernment and like reading people, you know, really seeing where a person's coming from and judging their character. I have a hard time with that. Some people are very good at that, and I'm not one of those people. So I think, if anything, that's one thing that came out of it, is I was able to see, because I came out of a very a lifestyle very immersed in Christianity. Came from a Christian home. My parents were Christians. They were not just Christians, but they were born and raised in a Christian home themselves. My three brothers were Christians and still are. I mean, just, I had, before going into college, I had no exposure other than, public high school and stuff, which was a lot of exposure to non-Christian world. But as far as, how do I say this? As far as exposure to Christians and how they lived from, different, from their own little worlds. You've got the, let's call them the legalistic Christians that came from even more um, strict handcuffed environments that I came from. But then you also had Christians that came from just very, a lot less rules, and things are a little bit more easygoing. Their households weren't, they didn't have as many rules. It kind of all came together, and I got to meet all these different types of people that came from different backgrounds, and it kind of gave me a perspective that I hadn't really seen before. And um, I think maybe for me that's why I answered the question how I did before, as far as would I push my own kids into Christian college, is because I've seen people from non-Christian backgrounds um, go into Christian education and turn out on both sides of the spectrum.
Right.
They come out
Yeah.
better morally, if you want to say it that way, or they've
Or more focused, maybe more focused.
Yeah, more disciplined, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I've seen it the other way around too, where someone who was not a Christian went into came from let's say came from a dysfunctional background, and then you insert them into say the public school system or the Christian private sector, and it just seems like there's no true way of doing it to where you can just guarantee that if you choose this path, this is the result.
Right.
And so it just kind of put that in perspective to me, that just, yeah, it's Christian school, but you're going to have people from all over come in here, and still it's all, I don't want to say they weren't influenced, because they obviously were influenced, but it's almost like it didn't have the effect that you would think it did. Like, because in that school you still saw a high degree of drunkenness and promiscuity and just things people were doing that you don't do at a Christian school. But then, I mean, so you saw both sides of it, and it didn't matter where they came from. And so it just kind of, for me, it put things in perspective that it's not only Christian students or those coming into a Christian education environment. This applies to every facet of life. So as you go on into your career, as you move on into other areas of your life, you are going to be exposed to people that have come from all kinds of different backgrounds and exposed to these new environments and situations, and they may not respond the way that you think they might.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really, that's a good point.
And so I think, just kind of thinking through that would be my answer to that question, but maybe
Okay,
it's
that's
also explaining a little bit more why I answered for how I did, as far as would I encourage my own kids to go to a Christian school, and
I'm
that's
glad
why
you did,
I
'cause
wouldn't.
I was offended, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not as offended.
Can I piggyback on a little Ford thing real quick?
Yeah.
All right. So, I've been, one of the verses from Hebrews that's been sticking out to me is at the end of this letter that whoever it was wrote to the Hebrews. the author says, let us, like Jesus, go outside the camp. And that reference to camp is talking about the Old Testament, the idea of the tabernacle moving around, and by being outside of the system, basically, like you didn't want to go outside the camp. Like that's like outside of the covenant community, basically. And I think that's where Christians, are actually supposed to be, is out there. They're supposed to be dispersed. And what I just feel is like we keep trying to make new tabernacles. We keep trying to make new temple structures, and we keep trying to make new synagogues of our own. And I feel like what ends up happening is it becomes artificial. I went to a Christian school when I was a kid, and there's always those stories like you're talking about, Mike. It's that there's this land, but land will never be holy again. And we don't really, from a Christian perspective, we don't believe that, but we keep trying to do it in a way. We keep trying to say, that, like, I mean, even that church sign that you said, like, now you're entering the mission field. Well, the mission field's not there apparently, because like on the church grounds, because that's a holy site. And I just feel like we keep importing that idea, and that is not a New Testament idea. That's the whole point being that you should be not on this mountain, not in Jerusalem, but anywhere, spirit and truth. Like that's how worship is done. Work is worship, and I feel like when we have an artificial, like this is a safe space for Christians, it ends up, well, I mean, I think it's like what we're seeing with the speech thing. And I honestly think Christians are to blame for a lot of this stuff. If we can make this area like a safe space, it'll protect people from stuff. But the real world, there's a lot of tooth and claw, and
yeah,
there's an artificial nature to some of this stuff. And I guess that's why I would still not choose it again.
Christians are some of the biggest snowflakes.
Well, I think we have proven to be that. Yeah.
Now, unless anybody has anything else to add, what I would like to segue into is our typical segment at the end to talk about how do we go forward? What we've talked about today, how do we take that into our lives tomorrow? It's the evening now. How do we take this into our lives right now? My brother always said, Ford, you talked about the tree. My brother always says, when's the best time to plant a tree? 50 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. So how do we plant a tree today?
Oh, geez.
Hey, real quick, Judah, have you been muting my microphone? Coming on and off.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback from you, so I mute it when other people are talking.
Okay, I was just making sure. I think maybe if I were to answer that here, I'm not going to apply it to my life. I'm going to apply it to the audience. So, like I said before, a lot of your audience who may have tuned in because of the other shows you've done, that maybe if they're still listening to this one, how is this beneficial to them? How is this particular show about Christian colleges something that they've never entertained the thought before? Why would this at all? How would this apply to them? And I would say, I've seen people choose to send their kids to a Christian school, almost as like a fix, because they think they've botched up their kids' lives, or they are insufficient to teach their children the right way, or they're like, okay, well, I can't do this very well, so here, I'm just going to send my kids off to a Christian school and I'm going to let them handle it. But that's really not a fix. So if that's you, or if maybe that's, maybe this message or this show can kind of resonate with you in the future when you do have kids, and that's an option down the road, I would say, think twice about that, because sending your child to a Christian school, although I think they're going to hear a great message, I think there's no doubt about that. I would not argue that. I think they are going to hear a great message. That's not like the fix to create or mold the moral individual you want them to be, because that job starts with you. It's not like you as the parent. That's who that responsibility falls to. It's not, let's just send them off to a Christian school and just hope that they do it because I fell short. Now I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, I still think they're going to benefit. Or I guess maybe to stay consistent, I should say that could benefit them, because it depends on their experiences there. You know, they, like I was saying before, they might come out of the situation in their home environment they're in now and go to a Christian college and have some very good experiences, and meet the right people. But they also might really see some things that do not represent Christ well and hold that against Christ, and that could happen as well. So that back to my point, it could go either way. But they will hear a good message. They will hear the truth of, you know, what we believe in Christianity. They'll hear that. It's just kind of, you know, their other experiences that are going to happen while they're there is going to all affect the outcome.
What about you, Ford?
You know, I would say if there's anybody still listening that's not Christian or a member of another faith, you know, if you're a member of another faith and you're thinking about sending your kids to a school that is, and I guess it just depends on the school, right? In Varanasi, there was a school I performed at, Banaras Hindu University, and so it has a very religious kind of background, but it's actually developed a really good pedigree. What's, you know, I don't know, yeah, whatever the word is there for their academic regimen. So I think, you know, it kind of just is on a case by case basis. Like, you got to kind of see, like, what is this thing's core? I mean, what are they really trying to do? Are they just trying to churn out members of the faith, or are they trying to really truly develop intellect, and in what direction? You know, and I guess that would be one of my issues with TFC. I mean, the vision, because it is informed by the Christian Missionary Alliance. My thoughts about that stuff has changed so much in the past 20 years. And I think a lot of the modern missions movement started from a good place, but I think ultimately was confused. That's my opinion on it. And I think you do want to find a place like it. You know, a lot of the Ivy League schools, they started off as Christian colleges. They started off as by Christians, and that changed over time. And, you know, I think with colleges in general, some of them still have a definite place. I mean, you look at the kind of innovations that come out of MIT and some of these tech schools. We're about to see some really interesting artificial intelligence stuff coming up here. And a lot of that comes from them. So there is a good place. And I mean, you know, thinking back to the Inklings, you know, the Tolkien and Lewis, like they were in Cambridge and Oxford. So
shout out to Dr. Williams, Inklings of Reality.
That's right. So I think there are higher education places that are really doing it right. It's kind of, I think what we're seeing right now is a shaking out of so many different institutions. Like we're starting to see that with filmmaking, where things are kind of, it's all, you know, coalescing around these real big tent peg movies, you know, and some of the other things are going to have to find other markets, because anybody can make a movie in 10 years. Anybody's gonna be able to make a movie. And so you're gonna have 100,000 films coming out and nobody's gonna be able to watch all of them, you know? And so I think we kind of had that glut already with universities, where it's like, oh, well, you know, there's Yale, can't go all the way to Yale, so let's make this university around the corner, and we make this university around the corner. It's like, I think we just are oversaturated with some of these institutions, and I don't really know what the next step is, but you know, for me, it's always peer to peer.
Well, peer-to-peer, but Ford, you always bring us back to the idea of, building a better me. Like, let's not waste time now, and let's not, and I don't know, I would add to that, and kind of what you've been saying is let's not look back and regret. Let's just get to work right now. Like we say, get to work. There's a lot to build. And what I would add to that is not only should we be working on ourselves and really pushing ourselves to work hard today, on these things, learning coding, learning, this technology stuff and other areas like, Mike writing and all these things. I think we are sort of pushing ourselves. We can push ourselves further, but also I think the aspect of each one teach one, I think mentoring, looking for who is that person in our life that, whether it be our kids, I think our kids, Ford, your kids are a little bit, Satya's a little bit older, but our kids are a little bit too young to really grasp that mentorship piece. But I think there are people in our lives that we can really get some enrichment by being the Colliers and the Wetmores, to these people without them having to pay for it.
Yeah, without having to pay $70,000. Yeah. That's true.
And I think that's the future, guys.
I do too.
That's the near future for us, is that we have to aspire to be the Wetmores and the Colliers and the Elkins and all these wonderful teachers that we have, but without the rigid structure of I'm here, I'm doing this, so I know I need to shut up. Without the
trappings.
The trappings. Thank you. You always have the words for it. Yes, the trappings of college.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Mike, last word.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I don't know. I mean, you guys have already talked about YouTube, on the show before, but that's just probably the most obvious example on the way the future looks is, just as far as anybody being able to break into that, it's just opens up the door. It's here already.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Okay, well, gentlemen, I've gone over my time limit, and this is gonna be one for the books as far as editing. But
why? Just put it up there. It's good,
dude. I gotta go back and redact some of that.
Yeah, maybe we can do a little intro for if you are, I don't know.
Nah, we don't. I'll probably most of it just be raw, but yeah, aren't you the one, Mike, who told me I need to keep it under an hour? Come on now.
Why? Where are we at right now?
Like an hour and a half.
Yeah, but this is also all the time we spent like before you started the show, though. So.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just kidding. You're right. You're right. All right, guys, but I really got to go. So any final thoughts? All right.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Ford and Judah. This has been awesome. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for dropping by.
Man, yeah. You got to come back, man. You got to come back. Yeah, although there was a little bit of feedback. I'm still hearing it from maybe it's just having 3 people on Hangouts.
Well,
can be problematic.
I'll have to test it next time, but
yeah. But don't forget, if you're listening, we actually had 2 viewers pop in, probably just Steven Sandridge, but don't forget that we are on Google Plus. We are on Stitcher Radio, and subscribe to us on YouTube, because every now and then you can catch these recordings live. And always tune into the Surfing Violinist every, Tuesdays, Thursdays, every night he plays League of Legends. So
but Sunday morning is when we actually do our real show. So
yeah,
if you don't want to see me lose League of Legends, then don't tune in those other times.
Hey, we won big last night. What are you talking about? Was that on Twitch? No.
Yeah, it's on Twitch.
All right, guys, this has been awesome. We got to do this again.
All right, sounds good.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.